In the previous video we saw how to create a date-banded atlas map by using the Edit, Insert, Data object part of MapMate. But supposing you want to insert a set of years that is different from the ones that MapMate actually offer you in this list. In our previous example we chose the year 2000 as the cut-off point, but perhaps I'd like to show the difference between before and after 2005. There isn't anything here that I can pick off the list. If you do need to use a date band that is not on the list that MapMate gives you, then you have to go into an existing data object and change the query text that it uses to sort out the dates from there. And the way to do this is to go up to the feature list, sort the type column into order a couple of times to find your data objects, and we're going to edit these so that they don't show records before and after 2000. We're going to use 2005 as our cutoff point. What I always do first is to just change the title of the feature so that I know what it is I'm aiming for. So instead of records from 2000 onwards, we want to right click over there and rename. This is going to be records from 2005 onwards. Press enter. And likewise for the other one, right click, rename, records before 2005. Press enter. All we've done so far is to change the title of the data objects. They're not actually doing anything different from what they were doing before. To make them do that, what we have to do is again right click over the one we are going to work on and tell it to show underlying data. This opens up one of MapMate's browse tables, and it may not look very obvious, but what this is actually doing is mapping out all the dots on the map. It's possible by clicking on this SQL button to look at the underlying code that generates these dots. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's the language that the database uses for constructing queries. Let's click on that, and a whole lot of code appears, which, depending on how much you know about SQL, may or may not mean anything to you. But most of this we can leave well alone. The only thing that we need to change is where it talks about the year. And in this particular data object, that's just one place where it says year, records date, greater or equal than 2000. So we can change that to become 2005, and that's the only thing to change. Don't start changing anything else in this query or it may not work at all. So we've changed the year. Before we do anything else, we must remember to save it, having changed it, and we do that by clicking on this rather anonymous looking yellow button. It tells us it's going to overwrite the map query with the change we've just made, so we OK that. And it then tells us that the query has been updated, but we won't see any changes until we reload the map. So we can OK that, close the query box. To reload the map, what we need to do is to go File, Reload, and it's redrawn the map. And something's definitely changed here because the dots are no longer where they were before we started changing the query. So we do the same thing with the other data object. Right click, show underlying data, go to the SQL, look for where it mentions years, and here we have year records date less than 2000. We want to change that so that it's less than 2005. Click on the yellow button to save it, OK to overwrite, OK that the query has been updated, close, File, Reload, and both sets of symbols have now changed. We go back and have a look at our map. What this is telling me is that nearly all the records here were before 2005, and I have just one square that's got a record since 2005. So that's all done. The only other thing to do for this particular map is to change the key, because this is still reflecting the old figure, not the new one. And once again, that's a matter of going into the feature list, find the key item that needs to change, right click over its name, rename, and simply type the new date in, press enter, and for the other key item, right click, rename, type the date, press enter, and that's our key updated as well. So it can be quite off-putting having to adjust the underlying SQL code, but as long as you're careful and just change the bit that you need to change, it works perfectly well, and that gives you complete control over how your date-banded maps will work.